Now, what was new with these cameras is that you could change the optics.
Oh.
Yes, and this is, of course, one of the main reasons that people wanted to upgrade their early cameras, because they wanted to have a telephoto lens, eventually an even longer telephoto lens. They could eventually also want to have the new and very, very, very fast Summar f2.0. Very nice. Oh, that must have been a dream. So Leica, what they would do is they would make a standard screw mount for lenses, and this standard mount had a 0 on the top. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
That is the standard Leica screw mount. And so they modified these cameras, and of course they made new Leica 3s, all the same, of course, the new cameras. But not only that, but the lens from the old camera was also modified. This is interesting. You see, this mount is fixed to the camera. Mm-hmm. You can't unscrew this without unscrewing 4 screws. But you cannot put another lens on it either. So it doesn't really work. So, and it did not have any depth of field scale. What they did with the old lenses is that they put a depth of field scale, and because of several other things, they also put another bottom flange on the lens. I think the only thing that they did not really change was the lens itself, because that is in a unit in this tube, right? And so this lens, since it came from the old camera, does not have a serial number, right? Mm-hmm. They did not need to have their own serial number, the lenses. If the camera had a serial number, that was enough, because the lens was fixed anyway. So why should, being German, no? Das ist nicht notwendig. Yeah. But of course, when the lenses became interchangeable, then of course the lenses themselves could be sold separately, and then they needed a number.
Sure.
Yes. So that is why from 1933 onwards, Leica started making lenses with this one, for instance, the Summar. Can you see the serial number?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
100.
1998.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And this one, 177 something. Yeah. You see, Leica, they were smart. They didn't start with lens 1. No, they started with lens 100,000. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 100,000. Because then they could have a whole batch. We want this batch from so-and-so to so-and-so. That would be a series of 90 Elmarites, and this would be a series of Summars, whatever. And they could assign these numbers, and that was much more practical for them. But it's very important to know that by 1933 they already had 100,000 lenses. No, they didn't. They just started counting them from 100,000. This is very important. Now, this camera, of course, can take these longer lenses. And it's still extremely compact. You see, this is a 9 centimeter, 90 millimeter. As the Leica system camera, as it now was from 1933 onwards. It was a camera system. They could start to design all sorts of goodies for it, isn't it? And Max Berek, the lens designer, he came out with wonderful things like this, like the Summar and like the Elmar, the long one, and there's also a short one, 35 millimeter. But in 1939, he came out with this Behemoth. You know what this is? Mm-mm. This is the Summar X. Mm-hmm. 1.5, 8.5 centimeters. That was the fastest lens that they ever have designed for commercial use. And God knows why they designed it. This was in 1939, and there must have been a need for it, but no one could buy it. I mean, they made a few of them, but then came the war, and a few hundred was sold to the German army. I mean, I guess they would, but after the war, they took up the production again. So this is a very late example. And they're very rare, and they're extremely impractical and very heavy. But it's one of those things that people like me, we would have this, and they make wonderful portraits. Portraits. The portraits that are so they're sharp, but they just melt. Very dreamy lens. This lens was also discontinued in 1938 because they came out with the better one called the Sumitar, not Summar. But the Sumitar was better in contrast, and it was sharper. But this lens has this dreamy look that you could never have later in life. This is a typical thing, all these wonderful portraits, family idyll from the 1930s. You see, I mean, everyone are happy, and Dad take a picture, and everyone smiles, and there's a certain glow around people. This was the lens that was used for that. But of course, the standard Leica photographer would always have the Elmar because it was so practical. It was so practical because when you pushed it in, it only built.
Wow.
And it's fantastic. And this is the same thing with this new thing with the rangefinder and viewfinder on top did not make it much bigger. Come on, I mean, you also had a viewfinder on the early cameras. You had to compose the pictures through something. So this was, in principle, it was the same height, and the new one is not very high. It's not higher. It's basically the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's extremely compact and extremely practical. And it's meant to take pictures with. And of course, the Leica, as you know, became the camera for photojournalists. That was the whole thing about them. They could go out and take pictures of what was happening. And still, to this day, the way we use the Leica, as you also know, is to be in the situation of where things are happening, because it's so compact and so unobtrusive that you take this picture, from the inside and out, and not from distance into something. Mm-hmm. And that is very, very important. And that is why the philosophy of Leica photography is that of something which is a living situation. You're part of what is happening. And that is why all these pictures also look like that. They are alive in a totally different way than setting up, smile, and the picture will be taken. No, it doesn't work like that. No, you don't say smile. In case, if you see a motive, it's normally then already too late. Huh? Mm-hmm. So that, but the Leica is very, you don't need to autofocus these things. You set it somewhere there, and then you know it's sunny today or half sunny, so 6.3 and and a hundredth of a second, and then you set fine, so 2.5 meters, and then you go around take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Okay.